take a look at the factory speaker. It uses a small neo magnet made out of a composite material. It screws in with one hole here and it clips in the bottom. It attaches like this, snaps into place, one screw done. The speaker we want to put in its location is this guy here. It's a little bigger and a lot deeper. That means it's just not going to sit in the door, screw in, and be nice and easy. We have to come up with a mounting system that takes this and fits it into this location. Let's head over to the door and just set this into the hole and see what that looks like. Because of those two clips, they've built this funny shape into the door, and that's where these go in, and it's got this clip-in bolt system here that just pops out. And this, of course, is perfectly round. The other thing too is the window gonna sit right about there. So if we just set this in, right here, I can see I'm touching the window. It's gonna need about an inch to come out of the door. If we do space it out an inch, that's kind of nice because this at an inch doesn't get in the way. It might get in the way of the actual door panel. If we look at the factory speaker again, it's about 1 1/8 inches deep, plus it has another 1/4 inch piece of foam and a hard piece of plastic on it, making it about 1.5 inches. The surround sits in about 1/8 of an inch. That means we have plenty of room coming out of the door. The basket comes out about 1 inch. With the surround here at 1 3/8 inches puts this right at the same as this speaker. That means I think the simple solution for this is to just make a panel that spaces this speaker out 1 inch. We'll roll the window down and just double check. With this at 1 inch, it clears the window by about 1/4 of an inch. We have nothing to worry about. This window also doesn't move any, so we don't have to worry about any window swing. It's a newer car, I didn't think we would. One of the things we do have is this guy right here. This is to add a speaker to the Hondas. It's only 1/2 inch thick though, but it's designed to mount the same way. It has the same clips in the bottom. It allows you to put a screw here in the top and it'll snap into place. Our speaker will also fit in this mount, but it's just not tall enough. But that does give us an idea. We basically just need this same shape, but we need it 1 inch thick. We also need some way to attach it to the door. These clips, though, are really cool for this lightweight speaker. This speaker weighs a lot more and is going to be moving a lot more too. We're going to get a lot more bass out of this speaker than we were getting out of this one. Being able to copy this shape and just make it bigger does seem like a good idea. So we can use this for our template. We want to take this to 1 inch. To fabricate that, we're going to use this stuff here. It's called Centra. It's a blown PVC. We're going to cut 4 of these out and stack them on top of each other to get them to the desired depth that we need for those speakers. Stack 2 of these on top of one another. So we use a thin double-sided tape to do that, also known as template tape. I'll go ahead and cut off any excess tape that is around here. We don't want it to get gummed up into our router bearing. Because we are going to be using both inside and outside of this template, we'll drill a hole in the center. Before I get started, I like to check my bearings to make sure that they haven't seized up from the time before. Just roll them to make sure that they're still spin and that there's nothing on the bearing. We also want to check the height to make sure that we have ample clearance all the way around because we're going to be going inside and out. As far as that goes, I like to start with the inside first and then move on to the outside. That way I have a bigger piece to hold on to while I'm doing that and then a smaller piece in the end. One of the things I didn't mention before we started is in that bearing. If we notice right here, there's this notch. If the bearing is too high, it's going to eat that up. So you want to make sure when you're doing it, you check all sides, kind of do a general like looky round. Before we make the second one, we'll go ahead and pop this one off and do a test fitting to make sure that it actually fits. This speaker does have a logo, and you may or may not be able to see it through the door. But what that means is this panel is going to attach to the door. The speaker is going to attach to the panel. We don't want to put the screws where they're going to get in the way of each other. There's a hole here from the factory that we're not going to be reusing. For mounting it, we're going to mark our screw holes in the top down left right position, and we'll use these corner spots here to mount this to the door. Let's go take it over to the car and double check. All right, so this fits perfect. Pull it back apart. The tape is not made to hold this thing in place. And though the screws once put in will hold it in place, we're just gonna put a quick bead of CA glue on here to hold these two together. Move it around just a little bit to make sure you get the glue everywhere it needs to be. Now CA glue requires an activator in order to have it stick together. For this we'll be using the aerosol. We'll let it set for a couple minutes to dry, and then we'll drill our holes. One of the things working with plastic is you should always drill your holes. Don't just drill right into it. It doesn't like that. We'll pre-drill the holes that the speaker's gonna screw into. Then we'll put some bigger holes that the bolts that are gonna pass through will screw into. We need this to be perfectly flat on the top. So we'll also add in a little countersink here. We want to make sure that we went in deep enough for these to fit in, and we did, because we want to make sure, like I said, that this is perfectly flat on here. How we're going to fasten these in the door is we're going to use these guys right here. This is called a nutsert, and it's basically a rivet. This area here is designed to crush. They thread into a tool, and then once the tool is applied, it crushes them into the metal. And what that gives you is a screw-in that is reusable. So you can screw it in and unscrew it as many times as you want. Makes servicing the vehicle super easy if need be. And of course it looks a lot nicer than just putting a drywall screw or a self-tapper into the vehicle. So nutserts have become super popular, and for this installation we're going to use this guy here, which is a pneumatic version of it, because we can easily get to it. It's in a door. However, there are some situations we want to use it that this obviously won't fit into. For that we have this here, which is designed to attach the end of a drill. This gives us length, so if we need to go down into an engine bay or over into a side panel, or we just generally need reach, we can use this guy here. In some applications we don't have a lot of height. We need to get in like this and squeeze. And the most popular version is this one here. Put it in location and you squeeze and it'll apply the nutsert. Having a variety of tools that perform the same task just in different ways is helpful to make the installation the way we want it to be in the end. One last step that we want to do to this panel before we take it over to the car is apply a thin layer of foam to the back side of it. And I mean thin layer of foam. We use a 32 of an inch foam on the back and front of all our panels that are going to attach to a car for a speaker. We've tried all different sizes. We ordered in 1/8 inch, 1/16 of an inch. And the problem we found is that speakers like this that are made out of a composite material usually are thinner than this, of course, but they twist and they bow around where the screw would go in. Obviously that can't be good for the prolonged performance of the driver, so we settled on this size in order to avoid that. We're gonna just put it on the back first so that we can get this attached, and then once we go to add in the speaker, we'll add it onto here. Let's head over to the car and get this fastened. Take our factory adapter here, and we have a grease pencil. We want to just mark where this is going to end up. Now we can line up ours, and we just want to score where we need to drill holes. Thread the nutsert onto the gun. Push. Then back it out of the hole. Then repeat the process. And then slowly work your way around. Don't tighten them all the way all at once. Add in our piece of foam in front of the speaker. Now the other thing I did when I was marking this for where I want the speaker to go, I put marks on tops and sides. That's to show where the hole is that we drilled. If we just had a mark on the front after putting the foam on, you'd never see it. The next thing we want to do is kind of a crucial step. We want to go ahead and screw the speaker in. Not permanently, but just screw it into place. The reason for doing this is so that we can put the door panel on and make sure that it clears and that the speaker isn't rubbing at all. So take a bright light and shine it into the door panel. And what you want to do is see where the mid base is. Now that you know that you're not going to have any hiccups once you're done with the door panel putting it back on, you could remove it back out. One other thing that we're going to add to this speaker is fast ring. If you'll notice here on this factory speaker, it has this layer of foam, and what that's designed to do is when it goes back into the door panel, it goes into a cavity, and this gasket allows all the energy that this little guy is creating to come through that grill. The speaker we just built, it doesn't have that. What we're going to be using is a product called a fast ring. It comes in 3 pieces. pieces that do 3 different things. The first piece is this front piece, and this is designed to mimic this gasket. It comes bigger than it needs to be so that you can actually cut this to length, because we're only going to need this small amount here. Granted, we're going to mount it to the door like this, so we'll cut it, and that'll help our speaker couple with the door panel. Then you have 2 back pieces. This one is designed to go into the door panel to help absorb vibration, and then this piece here is designed to focus that energy into the absorbing panel. Now how these 3 pieces work, take this piece here, and it's going to go in and stick to the back of the door panel here. The skinnier one is going to go in and mount to the inside of the door. There again, it may need to be cut depending on where the window comes down, and in this case it's going to need to be cut probably to about 1 inch. Then the front piece we're going to use to attach around the outside of our speaker bracket. You don't want to stick it to the outside of the speaker, because if you have to replace the speaker, you would then have to replace the fast ring. It's foam, it easily stretches into place, and then you just keep wanting to push it until it gets onto the metal like this. You need to just trim this up about 1/4 inch. To do that, have a sharp razor blade, work your way around gradually, and now it will match up to that factory depth. You definitely want to trim this. You don't want to leave it full length. What will happen is if it's too long, it will actually roll in on the speaker and crush into the surround of the speaker, and that'll damage the speaker. For the back, you're going to do the same. Back panels is the exact same idea. If this thing is too thick, or if there's a bar behind that runs across here, you just want to cut this to the appropriate length. Our window comes into the inside of the door. This guy mounted all the way into the back. We're not going to have that problem. Line it up with the center of the hole and just push it into place. And what you'll end up with is something that looks like this. One of the nice things of getting this on before you put the speaker in is that you'll know that you'll be able to get the speaker back out if you should ever have to service it. Like we said, we're doing a set of components in this door, and that means we have the crossover to contend with, this little cool box here. More and more speakers are breaking this into their dedicated pieces. They're doing away with the box, which as an installer is like, yeah, right? In this case, we don't have that. There's a couple different options as we can do. One of those is mounting the crossover in the vehicle somewhere. That can be tricky. The reason for that is this guy right here, the door boot. This is what passes the wires from the inside of the car to the door. Depending on the car manufacturer, that can be doable or it cannot be doable. The reason why, some car manufacturers, the door clips in. It's a straight up plug that it just plugs into, and there's no extra wires. Some cars, the plug is in the car. It just depends. There's a lot of scenarios. If it's something that you can't run through, then you're going to be mounting that crossover somewhere in the door or somewhere in that door panel over there. It doesn't hurt to see if it's something you can do first, getting that wire through the door. And I can actually reach up into the dash and put my finger in there, so that's telling me that the plug is a little bit further back in the dash. For that, we're just going to use our standard wire fish and see if I can fish this through. Wow, we just flossed that door. That means now what we'll do is we'll mount the crossover somewhere in the car. We'll just have to find a location to do it. We'll make a bracket, mount it into place. If we weren't so lucky, what would we have done? Now looking at this door panel, there's not a huge amount of options. We have this guy here, which really is just taking up space, but that gives us this. This crossover fits perfectly in here. What we would have done is we would have made a bracket that allows us to mount this crossover right here, and then we would have ran the wires up through this channel, attaching them along the way to these screw points. What we get for that are these right here. It's a 6-channel waterproof connector, and we put this right next to where the switch panel is so that it can be unplugged. That way when they need to go and take the door panel off for service, they don't have to mess with our crossover mount. It doesn't fall out of the door. It doesn't do anything silly. It's permanently fixed into the door panel. The dealership or anyone that has to work on it, they don't have to mess with our work. Keeps it nice and clean and out of the way. Like I said, we don't have to worry about this one. Back to the door panel for a minute, and what we found is that this area here and these overlapping panels, they like to, which is really kind of annoying. We add sound treatment now to prevent that, and we've had a lot of success with it. So looking at the sail panel with the tweeter mounted into it, the tweeter that's in here is a little bit smaller than the one we're going to do. We have to retain this factory look. We're not making sail panels here. He wants it mounted in from behind. It looks factory. The way they've designed this panel is that there's 3 clips holding it on, as well as these 3 welded plastic points to get this apart. Now the tweeter, just to get it out, it is just held in place by a couple clips, and then it will come out. You can see this guy here is a little bit smaller than our tweeter. That means ours is just not going to snap into place and be super simple. Thinking is I need to get these 2 pieces separated, see if it even fits in the hole, meaning that it lines up or if it's too big. To get these 2 apart, they plastic welded them together, so we're just gonna plastic weld them apart. Now once we get the 2 pieces apart, we have the mounting bracket, and our tweeter is still a little too big for this hole. In fact, it's about the same size as this hole. But the real question is, does it marriage up to this hole? And to see that, we need to go ahead and pull this grill off. Bring our tweeter up from the back side. It actually fits perfect. Now we need to figure out a way to get this tweeter to suspend right there, and also this to snap back in place. Let's see what this looks like when this is inside of here. And it mounts up flush with this internal lip. Let's start by making this hole as big as possible. Size of these tweeters, there's 2 little teeth that stick down. I want to draw them onto here so I know where they're at. I'm also thinking I can remove this outside here and bring this down about 1/8 of an inch, and my tweeter will snap right into place. Grinding away some of that to make room for this to snap in. Let's put it back into its little pod here. Snaps right in. Look at that. What I'm thinking we'll do is we'll add screws to where those factory weld points were, so that we can take this apart if we need to. Then we don't have to worry about the tweeter twisting it up. Those 2 little pieces that stuck down, and I groove those in so the tweeter just stays mounted in those little holes. And it's not glued in there, so I don't have to worry about, you know, oh, we gotta break all this glue off, so it'll stay put. So what we use is a small 1/4 inch screw with a star locking washer on it. Now the last thing we want to do is put a clip on here so that, like the factory, it just unplugs. Once you're done soldering and you put your heat shrink on, you want to wait a couple minutes in order for this stuff to dry and become nice and hard before you put your tape over it. It's still kind of gooey, and you don't need the 2 of them like sticking together or bending in some strange way. Now as far as the tape we're using, we use Tessa tape. There's 2 different types of Tessa tape. You have the interior fuzzy style and you have the exterior non-fuzzy style. One you can easily rip, the other one you have to cut with a pair of scissors. We live in Florida. This stuff here, this doesn't hold up this well. We primarily use the exterior Tessa tape on everything we do because it doesn't get all gummy and gooey. Put a zip tie in to hold the wire in place so that it doesn't get yanked out. And there we go. Tweeter's all set. Factory mount. Snap right back in place. We have the door back together. We were able to run in 2 new wires for our crossover. So we have a new mid-range wire in place here, all set and ready to plug into the speaker. And we have the new tweeter wire here that we added our clip on so that if this needs to come off for any reason, it's still serviceable. The last step is to get that mid-range screwed in and get this door panel back on. The back of the door has all its sound treatment back on it. So that finishes up the process for the front doors.